Hey guys, Keith Hernandez here. Welcome back to another cast and chat. Today we'll be casting out the Pattinson Cowl and the throat piece, not the collars. This is going to be a little bit of a special, unique one because the throat piece is an injected casted piece. I'm going to be going through that process in a little bit more detail so you can see how that works out. Overall, it's pretty much the same, so we'll talk about how it's a little bit different in the basic formula that I use for the other cows that we've done in Cast and Chat, and have a little chat about the Batman Part 2 and where that's going. This is my personal display that I've been building. It's actually stalled out, I think with a lot of us, because the Batman came out in 2022. You kind of lose that fire, being that it's been so long. But now that they're starting to ramp up and get ready to film, that fire is starting to grow a little bit with me, and that gave me the inspiration to finish a sculpture that I started back in late 22, and really happy that I finally finished it. The suit is provided to me by Napier's, and it is a beautiful design suit. He provided everything here, the chest piece, shoulders, everything, and I can't thank him enough. Thank you to Napier's for providing the suit, and the cape was done by Roberto, and it's a work in progress. It's got a lot of things that I want to improve upon. It hasn't even been painted or weathered, as you will, but we will hopefully, I think I want to kind of progressively show that. So this might be the first project build for the channel. I want to talk about doing the chest, the shoulders, and the gauntlets, and take you along the way with that. So look forward to that in future videos. Big shout out to Secret Wars TV. You were the winner of the Sonar Cowl from the last Cast and Chat, and we will be giving away the cowl and throat piece of this Cast and Chat. The giveaway is a little bit different though. Before I'll give this away, I want to hit the target number of 500 subscribers. We are really close, but we did not get it to 500 in the last video. So in this video, in order for me to give this cowl away, I need to reach that 500 subscribers. I think we're at like 489, so it's really close. It's not an unrealistic reach, but share this, like it, comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe for your chance to take home the Pattinson Cowl. And without further ado, we've got a lot to cover. It's a little bit longer video, but I think it's worth it in the end. So let's get down to the studio and cast this guy up. All right, we're back. Another Cast and Chat. Today, we're casting out of this. My Robert Pattinson cowl. Beautiful cowl. This is a special cowl because the throat piece is separate. So we will be also casting while chatting in this beautiful cord mold that I designed for that piece. This is an example of what comes out of it. So little throat piece. This has some flashing on it, so it hasn't been trimmed. This was pulled this morning. So all these wonderful things we'll be casting today. This is smaller than what we've cast in the past, so we're looking at a much different formula. 330 grams of A and B. That will go in here in 3 rounds of 120 each round. And then this little guy, he uses only 100 grams of A and B, and it's injected through an injection port right here in the back. So we have a little hole right here. We'll inject that. You'll get to see that in action. And then there's some bleeding holes that we cover up using screws. So lots of fun today. A little different in the routine here. In the past, I had pre-mixed everything, and the problem that I ran into is that it would start setting because I would pre-mix everything well in advance before starting filming, and then it'd be all clunky and stuff. So we will be mixing on camera today and chatting along the way. So without further ado, let's begin. We'll start with the cowl first, since it has the most urethane and it's big, and we'll be able to set it aside and then talk about the core casting as well. But for today's chatteroony, we want to talk about the Batman 2. I mean, it's obvious that's what we're going to talk about, right? We're casting the cowl from the first one. Why not talk about the soon-to-start production Part 2, if that's what they call it. I don't know what they're going to call it. It seems more fitting for the style of movie to call it Part 2. But a lot of rumors have come through, and I want to talk about those rumors because it is a fun little chat, I think, when it comes to Hollywood and the decisions they make. But biggest decisions on the table right now, and a lot of this stuff is I think still rumors. I haven't seen anything that's like concrete, super official. Maybe I'm missing things, or maybe I'm not reading all the articles through, but the biggest rumor is Scarlett Johansson, beautiful actress, coming in as the rumored wife of Harvey Dent, which is a slightly different variation than we've seen of the other two Harvey Dents. Harvey Dent in, obviously, Batman Forever is extremely different than what is usually portrayed as. And then, of course, Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight is, I guess, more of like a precursor to him having a family life, which he does have in like The Long Halloween, which I think is a strong source that Matt pulls from in terms of his storytelling, because a lot of Long Halloween aspects I think were in the first movie. But the biggest rumor that I read, and this was a month or two ago, was that Scarlett, they were going to do a role reversal and have rumored perhaps a female version of Two-Face, which I can strongly see as a possibility because we've already had two Two-Faces, and now we're potentially going to be seeing a third. I do think that would be a damaging thing to do because Two-Face is such a prominent character, and I know Hollywood has this thing with gender changing the roles between having a male version and a female version, which there's nothing, I don't think, wrong with that. It's just that Batman to me, and I think to a lot of other people, is a very sacred kind of story, characters, all that stuff. And when you go and start meddling around with what we expect to try to be different, I think has poor reception. And so if that's the case, I think that would be a bad move. Also, because Scarlett Johansson's a very beautiful woman, why would you pay someone who I'm sure is top dollar in terms of actors, why would you make her half ugly? That would be very counterproductive. But again, these are rumors. Rumors get you talking, and I think that's a lot of what Hollywood loves. They love you talking about what they're doing and get you really thinking. The other rumor is that Sebastian Stan has been added to the cast as Harvey Dent. And I think that's beautiful. That's perfect casting. That dude looks like Harvey Dent. That dude could definitely play Harvey Dent. And there's pictures from his hairstylist, that some crude drawings of him as Two-Face. Again, I think it's just stirring the pot, which is something that Hollywood loves to a degree, I think. And I think that would be an amazing interpretation, because I think he has the Harvey Dent look, and you just muck up the other half. Boom, you've got yourself Two-Face. So we'll see. We'll see if that pans out. But again, I think these were mostly rumors. I don't know if there's any like official casting other than, you know, the original actors that are in the movie. But I would love to see that. I think Sebastian Stan is great. I also think it's kind of comical, if these rumors are true, how you know, you're getting these Marvel actors into these movies, and it is a testament, I think, of just how much Marvel has done in terms of movies and pulling from their actors that are available. There's a lot of actors in Marvel movies. It's now getting to the point where I think we can't see a movie on the DC side that isn't going to pull from a Marvel actor, because of the amount of movies Marvel has done. But we'll see. But the biggest thing, besides these rumored castings, is of course they're going to have the Joker. I was not a fan of the, I guess, deleted scene. The way they were portraying the Joker, very, very, I would say, grotesque. Again, it's one of those things with Matt Reeves' version of Batman. It feels heavily influenced by Christopher Nolan's universe, or whatever you want to call his trilogy. So whatever the case may be, maybe they'll change him, maybe not, probably not. I think in today's day and age, what you see is what you're going to get. They already showed us something. It's definitely an interesting dynamic, which is unique because of the whole, you know, chatting in the Arkham Asylum, getting info and perspective from the Joker. But I'm pretty sure he's playing a more prominent role. Maybe he escapes. Maybe Two-Face helps him escape. I don't know. Those are kind of the leading things that could happen. Is the Two-Face the primary potential for the villain? I don't know. Again, it's interesting that this is the direction that it could be going. And that direction is things that have already been done to a degree. Talking about villains, not story. I'm sure the story could be, you know, different, but there's so many villains, and it's all the main ones, I guess, that Hollywood wants to use have been used, and now we're recycling. I don't know, but we have what, a year and a half? Yeah, like a year and a half to find out, which kind of leads to doing my whole idea of like this cowl. This cowl, I talked briefly about it in the intro. I started this sculpture for this particular cowl in late 22. You know, we're in 26 now, and there was a period of time where just the interest fizzled out because the delays just kept coming. You know, by the time the Batman Part 2 comes out, it'll be 5 years, over 5 years, because it came out in March and the new one is supposed to come out in October, which is odd in my eyes because it should be a summer movie. Don't they want to make maximum profits? But I guess the time to make, I don't know, because I guess it's a, I don't know why this one takes so long, this Batman movie. When you look at the Superman movie that they're making, the Man of Tomorrow, whatever, the buddy movie that they're doing, that has a 2027 release date as well, tentative, and it comes out before the Batman. And turnaround time is that for the last Superman movie that Gunn did was going to be like 3 years or something. So it has an interesting line of what is going on with this particular movie. And I think that's hurt a lot of my desire and interest in everything to do with it. But it's slowly coming back. You know, they should be starting to film, I think, within the next few months. And that's exciting because maybe we'll get some more insight of what they're doing and kind of start to see a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. Will they change the suit? Will they change the cowl? Here's what I think, and you can let me know what you think in the comments, but I think Matt Reeves is pulling a lot out of in terms of following the footsteps of Christopher Nolan. I think that he is going to maintain the suit in most of its original setup. I would be surprised if he even changes the cowl. I think a lot of it is going to be the same. If there's anything changed, I think the two main things that would change would be the cowl to a degree. I think it will still be very segmented like the first one. And then I think the chest might change. And shoulders maybe. But I think the principal undersuit would be the same. And all the other kind of accessories. I just don't see him going through and changing a lot of the suit because he's going for that realistic approach. And realistically, if somebody is running around the streets dressed as Batman, they're probably not going to change a whole lot, especially if it's working. But they might have to change some things, like the cowl, because maybe it got messed up. I mean, some of his stuff, what he was wearing at the end of the first movie, were pretty well damaged. So that's why I said the chest, because the chest was all shot up. I can't remember if the cowl was like torn up. I don't think it was, but it was very dirty because it's leather, so it's durable. We'll see. I hope it stays the same because I think it makes it more believable. And you know, Batman is not dictated by the toys anymore like it used to be. And when they were like, we gotta make toys, we need different suits. And if you look at Christopher Nolan, the only reason why the suit changed in the second one was because he wanted something that was more movable and versatile, and you couldn't get that with the Begin suit. And that's why it changed in The Dark Knight, and it's why it stayed the same, because it worked. Which is interesting, because in The Dark Knight Rises, you actually are given an opportunity for there to be another suit, because when he gets the crap beaten out of him by Bane and taken to the Lazarus pit, he was still, you know, they probably just chunked his suit. I mean, the cowl, he's broke it, but lo and behold, he had a second identical suit in the other warehouse bat cave. So why he didn't go for a second suit in that movie was the principal example of why change something if it is already working. So that's where I think the whole aspect of suit changes is probably leading towards, because again, Matt Reeves is pulling a lot of Nolan's cards when he's making these movies. Not to say that Matt is being unoriginal, it's just that those movies work so well to the degree of what he's trying to do. It's not a comic movie, it's a serious toned, realistic movie. With this particular cow, we want to make sure that everything is well coated. It's got a pretty, in this particular sculpture, because I like my sculptures to be, the prints to be displayed. I have certain ones that I keep in my sculpting room. This one has a very, definitely prominent chin and nose, so those areas need to be kind of focused on. One of the things that I try to do when making cowls is making sure that urethane gets into the face a lot. And we'll talk about that in more detail when I make my casting video on how to cast a cowl. But that's generally where we're at with this particular cast. And again, flipping it over to let it drain. I designed this mold a long time ago, and so one of the problems with this particular mold is it likes to rock. I did not flatten out the back. It's more rounded, and that is an oversight in the mold design process, which I do plan to do a video on as well, to talk about making molds and how I go about doing it, because it's much different now than when I did this. But future videos, lots to make. In the time being though, talking about the Batman, one of the interesting things about this particular cowl, what I was going to say about the cowl, we have a cowl that is, the production cowl is pretty interesting because it's extremely, I think, overcomplicated in terms of like practicality, in terms of making it. This particular cowl, I have designed in it the stitching to be in the sculpt. The original cowl, they hand laid those stitches or hand stitched them, however you want to say it. And that process is, I think, way too much work. But Hollywood does some of the weirdest things when it comes to making things. Sometimes they over-engineer things, and then sometimes they don't, which is kind of comical, because the whole hand stitching thing, because I've had people ask, you make a hand stitch one? It's not practical. It's doable. I actually designed this sculpture where the stitches were separate, and then I add the stitches in the last step before printing. But the thing about hand stitching is there are areas of the cowl that are really difficult to get to. I think in the production cowl, it's a much more segmented cowl, so that they're easier to get around into those areas. That's just not practical in terms of casting. But with their cowls, what's really interesting, because this is a scan of a production cowl using a technique called photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is where you take a series of detailed photos, and then using a specialized program, it will stitch those photos together and generate the model or raw data. It's not really that great. You have to spend much more time cleaning it up and correcting it. But because of that, you get to see a lot of cool details about this cowl because of all the nice high resolution photos that are taken of it to create that skin. And one of the things you'll notice on this cowl, and you can see it in some people's photos who have seen the touring suit, the cowl has visible print layers. And they're not like the typical print layer that you might think of, where you see lines for each layer of the print. But when you do a resin print, There are areas sometimes that when the printer gets to these layers, it kind of creates these segmented kind of like layer line, topographical. It looks like a map if you look at a topographical map. And that is visible on the actual production cowls, which I think is ironic because they take the time to hand stitch the stitching, but they didn't take the time to manually clean up and remove those print layers. And that's the baffling thing about Hollywood sometimes, is that the choices that are made, like the whole suit of the Batman, it is an overcomplicated engineering piece when it comes to around the base of the collars and the chest. There is a few photos that I grabbed off of the behind the scenes YouTube video, and you can see where they have the chest plates off, and you just see the undersuit, flight suit, whatever you want to call it, and then the collars. And you can see that the collars are attached to this plate that is underneath the flight suit, and they love using those biker clips. I forget the names off the top of my head, but these quick snaps that they have on there, they're all magnetic snaps, and that holds the collars down to the chest, which I'm sure the piece underneath the flight suit is strapped on. And it's like, whoa, why are you putting so much effort into this? Velcro is king, man. And I have the suit that I'm working on, I'm just gonna Velcro that stuff down. They almost took the time, and maybe this was a request for Matt. Maybe he was like, make it real. But they look like they took the time to break down the suit and make it authentic, fightable, flightable, I mean, whatever. All this over-engineering for something that could be so much simpler. And I get it. Perhaps that plate underneath the chest holding the collars keeps the collars from moving when he turns his head. Perhaps that is the reason. Maybe Velcro shifted too much with the body. I don't know. But it is extremely, very well thought out and very over-engineered. But when it comes to the cowl and the whole stitching idea, looking at my cowl versus a hand stitch cowl, unless I don't paint the stitches, or whoever gets a cowl doesn't paint the stitches, you're not going to know unless you're right up on it. There are parts of the cowl that weren't hand stitched to begin with. They only hand stitched certain areas of the cowl. So I guess it's for that authenticity. I don't know. But I opted not to do that version. I don't plan to do that version, because I know I don't want to sit here and try to hand stitch all of those little stitches. It just seems like an invalid use of time. So with this cowl, we're pretty much at a good state. I'm just making sure that I keep the urethane flowing in correctly so it's not pooling anywhere. You don't want to leave a cowl upright or upside down for too long, because too many things will happen. If you leave it like this, what is still moving, what hasn't kicked, is going to pool down to the bottom. You'll have a big thick spot. If you keep it like this, you're going to have a pooling of all the urethane that's still kicking come out, and then you're losing urethane. So you have to constantly kind of keep it and baby it. It also prevents from being streaky on the inside. Just taking my hand, because with experience and years of doing it, you can get a good sense of just, you know, how thick things are just by touching it. And just making sure some of the golden areas that can be problematic have been attended to. One of them for this particular piece is the bridge of the nose. I purposely left the bridge of the nose, and I'll tell you why here. You know, because the bridge is cut out in the actual cowl, I could have designed the actual mold to be completely angular all the way down to the base of the middle of the collars, because those areas get removed. But I know from my personal experience that if you cut the bridge of the nose out, for some people, the nose will stick out. I know for me, for example, my nose is slightly long at the tip, and if I cut the bridge out, it'll stick out. But if I leave the bridge in, it will pull my nose up and then it'll look normal. So I do that on purpose, so everyone has an option of hiding their nose if it's too long. But the actual prop, it's removed. All right, we're gonna let that set, and let's get to this guy. This is the throat piece. There are more bolt holes than I need for this, so you might notice in here some are not bolted. As a professional, I would tell you to put wing nuts on your cord mold, but I'm not going to. I've already done some without it. It doesn't necessarily need it, but just know that you probably should if you haven't done it. I did a practice. One of the things that come with experience is knowing when is a good time to cut a step and save time. That's one of them that I came up with. This is cast upright like this. There are bleeder holes, 3 on each side. Those bleeder holes will be plugged with screws. Some might say don't do that. I do it. It has worked for me for decades on molds. It is a cheap, quick solution. I do not like clay so much because it's messy, especially the type of clay you should be using, which is this kind of clean clay. It's a real soft, squishy clay. I normally use clay for the injection port, but today I'm going to just use a screw and screw it in, and that should block it. It'll be a lot cleaner and won't have all this clay gunk everywhere. One of the things that I also did that's been done off camera is I put a release agent on it. It's a specific release agent. It's a wax-based release agent that is liquefied through a solvent, and I brush it on the core inside and outside and along the edges of the main mold, but not on the silicone. I also powdered the mold with baby powder to help the urethane get into the areas that it needs to get into. That is air blown out, so there's not a buildup anywhere. And typically, because urethane is so thick, you need something to help break that surface tension. That's what the baby powder's for. I usually do not kick the urethane in a cord cast, because one of the things kick it does is it starts to thicken the urethane quite quickly, and the thicker the urethane is, the more likely you're going to have some kind of surface air bubble. So I am not doing that for this batch. This is a 100-gram batch, which is really not that much, and I am going to do everything on camera. So we have part B with the urethane dye already in it, and I just going to pour it into the mold. This part is pre-measured, so 100 and 100. I don't need the scale for this, so I'm not going to be able to get everything out of here, and it's okay if it's not perfect. When you have a material that is a 1-to-1 base weight or 1-to-1 volume, you can get out of missing a few little bits. That's all together. Going to mix it. Again, this isn't going to be kicked, so it's going to flow really, really well, which is going to help with air entrapment. I have in the past kicked it a little bit, and I'm talking a smidge of kick it, but it's always trapped a little bit of air. Fixable, but let's go for avoidable. So this is just a typical syringe you can get off of Amazon. I plug the end with my pinky here, and I fill it all the way up to 60. You can see how much flow that has. It's a little bit messy here. I'm going to release this, and I'm going to press out the air because there gets some air entrapment in there. Going to stick it in the hole and inject it. It will start to bleed. 60 grams or 60 milliliters is about enough. Hear the air coming out. That's great. I'm going to pull it out. Put this back in just to plug the hole so it doesn't keep coming out. I'm going to let the bleeders keep bleeding. Pour the rest in here. And that, again, there's a lot more than I needed, and that's because I want to make sure it is well filled. Okay, plenty in there. I'm going to start plugging holes, and I like to go towards the bottom first so the air is continuously moving itself up. One of the things that I should have done with this particular core, and I'll probably do it in the future because it doesn't take long to do, but I should have printed this core in gray and not black. Having it in black makes it a little bit tricky to see where the urethane's coming out of because the urethane's black. But follow the mess. These are hand tightened. I don't need to do anything tighter than that. Get the last one in. And then we will go to the main hole. Just find it and give it a couple of twists. I do have clay in case this backfires. My hands are getting a little slippery. I probably should have used a hex nut. There it goes. Couple of turns, and this is done. We'll let that cast out. So a little bit messy. That's why I do a layer of release on the outside, because I can clean this up. It'll peel off. You have to release the core. If you don't, the urethane will stick really, really tenaciously. Urethane by default it's an adhesive, so if you don't release, you're going to have problems. We want to reuse this at least a couple of times. I like to get a couple of uses out of it. So there's a lot of urethane still in there, and all I'm going to do is pull it off, tip it over so it just comes out, and then eventually what does cure, we'll be able to just pull it out. This we want to clean off a little bit better though, because it affects the seal. So I just kind of run it along the table. And little bit left over. I probably will adjust the formula a little bit because there's a lot left over in here. I mean, I say a lot, it's probably like 20, 30 grams. But the idea is with a cord casting is to generally use as little urethane as possible. You want exacting numbers so that you're not wasting anything. When you're hand casting stuff, you have a little bit of extra because you have that margin of, run out, and you need to make sure you compensate for that. Cores, you don't have to, so we can go a little bit over, just a little bit, just to cover any of the outpouring from the bleeder holes. Let's get to pulling these. We're going to pull these out of the molds and see the final results. But before we do that, my version, I like to add in some Velcro down the sides so that this piece just Velcros in. So I'm going to do that. This is a beautiful material. I get it off a place on Etsy. It's just, you just Google fabric Velcro or fabric loop fabric. This is what I use to do the mesh eyes so that you don't have to glue anything in. It's all embedded into the urethane and it's very flexible. So I just take it, and in this instance I just run it down the sides all the way. It's a generous amount, more than needed, and that's it. I just make sure it's nice and seated across the entire surface so that it is not capturing any bubbles in between the layer and the urethane. And this is, I think, a little bit more simpler than the original. The original does Velcro. It has also these little straps and doohickeys. It's much more complicated. Even has a carbon fiber strip. I don't mess with any of that. And there it is. Voila. All right, let's open these up and take a look at how they came out. All right, we're going to start opening up these molds. We'll start with the throat piece. That's the beauty of all the screws, is that it just come off quite quickly and easily, and not having like a clay residue anywhere. All you have to do really here is make sure that we get that surface, or that air. It's airtight now because we pushed all the air out when we poured in the urethane. So we just have to get that to break. You can usually hear it. You might not hear it on camera though. But once we get that broken, the rest of it pretty much peels off quite simply. Just a little bit of a tug. There it is. Turned out really nice. I don't see any air bubbles, so we got a pretty flawless cast. So love that. And just to show you, it just peels off of that with little to no effort. You can see there's just a little bit of flashing. Sometimes the flashing is in different areas each time you cast it. Perfect. So we'll set that aside and go to the cowl itself. I like to just carefully peel back around the edges, make sure it's free from the printed jacket, because that's the only area that's going to stick to something. And you know, I did not release the jacket. You could do that and it would make this step even easier, but it's not necessary. You just carefully run around the edge. Once we've got it all breaking away from the jacket, I like to pull from the front of the face because that's where the deepest areas are, the nose, and get in there and just pop the ears out. There it is. Beautiful. Beautiful cast. Put that on a little high quality stand. And there's our finished Pattinson cowl. Just needs to trim it up. We'll glue on some Velcro on the ends here that's not visible when you wear it, and then it'll be done.